Splatoon Raiders dropped on Nintendo today, and a lot of people are trying to say that Nate the Hate called it and that this was a valid prediction. No. During the last year's announcement of Splatoon Raiders, they confirmed that it would be coming summer of 2026. Okay, so we already knew a general time frame of when this would be coming out, but of course, Nate the Hay has to come out and pretend that this was inside information, and of course, retards have to act as if this like means something, or if he has inside sources, it's not true. So let's get that out of the way right now. Nate the Hay is a fraud, and don't listen to him. But more importantly, Splatoon Raiders looks awesome. You got my guys with on deep cut. You got your really cool Wind Waker looking protagonist. When you're on an island, making stuff. You got the single player focus. We got a price point. $50. Which I don't think anybody was expecting. We're starting to see a lot more cheaper games coming out of Nintendo lately. So we're seeing Splatoon Raiders. We're seeing this game, and it's this looks really good. I'm very anxious to see how good this is, because there are concerns. I did not like the side order DLC in Splatoon 3, so hopefully it's better than that. But I imagine, considering this is a standalone project, that hopefully it has a bit more thought put into it, and hopefully it doesn't have as many reused assets. Hopefully, okay. Splatoon's a really interesting IP, because in a lot of ways it still feels like it hasn't hit its stride. It hasn't become popular in America yet. So I hope this is going to be the big thing that makes Splatoon popular in America, because I think a lot of people do this thing whenever they see this a new Splatoon game and try to do this thing where they're like, oh, it's the same game again. First of all, that is not and never has been true. And second of all, they just keep ignoring all of the things that are added to the games, whether it was this, the Salmonids, or the DLCs, or the single player even. Nobody talks about the single player in these games. So it's very interesting to kind of see what very well may be the end of the Nintendo community grift in regards to Splatoon. Because Splatoon's a really interesting phenomenon, because you see how it's popular with younger people, you see how it's about to pop off, you see how they're slowly building up their audience and how they're a huge hit in America and especially in Japan. And yet, every single time one of these games comes out, whether they talk about it in Nintendo Direct, you always see Max Dude or DSP or whatever seize up, and they're just no, nobody likes this. This isn't for me. It's only popular in Japan. They spurg out. They have this playbook now when talking about Splatoon, because whenever they talk about updates to the game, they're just well, none of this matters. I don't play the game anyway. Whenever they talk about the DLC, nobody cares, because they don't know anything about the characters or the setting or how wildly different the DLC is than the base games. Really, Splatoon 2's DLC is probably the best third-person shooter campaign I've ever played in my life, and good luck getting any of these people to acknowledge that. Every single time one of these games comes out, we have to deal with these people, during a Nintendo Direct, just sitting there and pretending that it's not an exciting announcement. And, obviously this isn't going to stand the test of time. It's going to have, the same issue, I think, that, the Nintendo fans hating JRPG fans had. In that, at a certain point, that enough people like the RPGs where they really start clowning on YouTubers for not liking them, and so they kind of have to retroactively kind of pretend that they actually really like JRPGs. Scott the Woz had to do that, where he had to come out and try and pretend as if oh guys, I'm not the not an RPG guy video doesn't actually represent his views on RPGs, because it became such a stereotype and people started clowning on them so much. So what's happening now is that Nintendo, in order to deal with YouTubers, in order to deal with these negative reactions, in order to deal with these dipshits who don't know what they're talking about and are just desperately trying to downplay this game in order to try and push you to COD or Battlefield or Titanfall or whatever, all of which are way inferior brands, by the way. They made the decision to make Splatoon Raiders a Nintendo Today exclusive. So it's never been talked about in Nintendo Direct. They revealed it in a Nintendo Today reveal. They revealed it, the release date in a Nintendo Today, and it's coming out this summer. Okay, so basically what they did was they bypassed like the terminally online reactors, people like Arlo and people like that, and they just they just Nintendo Today did. No Nintendo Direct. They just revealed this major Nintendo game as a Nintendo Today exclusive, and Nintendo Today doesn't allow you to react to its content. Nintendo Today, they do their reveals, and the news gets out into like the typical ecosystem on the online server, but the YouTuber can't get a hold of it until quite a bit later, until it's publicly available on streaming platforms. So because this isn't tied to a Nintendo Direct, these YouTubers have to react to this announcement on its own. And so what that means is that they can't do that thing where they sit there and just go nobody cares about this, nobody wants to see this, what's next, Nintendo? Instead, they have to do a reaction to this one video, this one clip that everybody else is excited for, and then try and nitpick it. And what they're gonna realize is that this isn't gonna work. Okay? If you have a YouTuber coming out and speaking out against Splatoon Raiders and trying to say it looks bad, that person is just gonna get clowned on. Okay? It's not something that any fan of the game wants to hear. The only reason games like Splatoon have been successfully downplayed so much is because the YouTube community does this thing where they glaze other Nintendo games more, where they talk about Tears of the Kingdom or Prime 4 or Smash Bros announcements while ignoring things like this. Okay, that's been the general cliche of how this stuff plays out. So this is basically the next evolution of the Nintendo Direct. So instead of cutting out toxic gaming journalists misrepresenting the products, instead we're cutting out toxic gaming YouTubers who do nothing but sit there and complain about every game that comes out. Again, this is very, very interesting to see this happen, because Splatoon Raiders, I think, has a very good shot of being the first Splatoon game ever that isn't mired in some bullshit online controversy. Every single time. When Splatoon 2 came out, oh, it's too much like the original, bro. When Splatoon 3 came out, oh, it's too much like Splatoon 2, bro. People just weren't playing the game. They didn't know how the updates work. They didn't know about, the release schedule. They didn't know about anything. It was unbelievably dumb. Okay? It was ridiculous. And, they still don't know how active the player bases for these games are. Splatoon 2, to this day, still has a pretty active online scene, even long after 3 has come out. These games have longer lifespans than the average third-person shooters because there really isn't anything quite like them. And this is a problem, I think, that a lot of people don't understand, and something that's becoming a bit of a problem in this community is that, Splatoon is obviously this huge cultural phenomenon with younger people, and yet we're still going through this phase where you have these 40-year-old YouTubers just kind of sitting there and just being I only play games on my gaming PC. I don't care about this. I just want to emulate it, bro. Again, it's just, you see this a lot. I'm reminded very strongly. I shared this video on Twitter, by the way. You might have seen it. Arlo, right? 7 months ago, last Nintendo Direct, the September one, 2025, Arlo made a video saying this is not the Nintendo Direct we needed right now. And it was just him coming out and saying that everything was disappointing, everything was bad, there were no big announcements, that Nintendo was going to have a rough year ahead of them. And even back then, that was obviously retarded and off base, and yet people take it seriously because oh, it's Arlo, oh, he's a big Nintendo fan. First of all, no, he's not. But second of all, this is exactly what I'm talking about, in which people like Arlo will look at all these games coming out and just kind of sneer at them for not being Paper Mario or Pikmin. You know, that's what he's known for. That's his thing. You know, Arlo doesn't have any real capacity to like enjoy anything outside of like those two very specific things. And honestly, like it kind of feels like more and more as if he only cares about the GameCube versions of those things. Okay, like so when you look at like what Nintendo is doing, when you look at like the Nintendo Today format and how it's cutting out people like this, how someone like Arlo would never be able to get away with like making a video shit talking like Splatoon Raiders, you know, on a day where like no other news is coming out, right? Like we are in the situation where it feels as if like we've kind of successfully like evolved the Nintendo Direct formula, where instead of getting like one big presentation every couple of months, instead like we can get updates regarding major releases like every day. Okay, and like they might not be like big releases, you know, you might just be like tuning in to Nintendo Today to look at like facts about Metroid or whatever, or like, you know, learn about Fire Emblem Shadows and the like. But like the simple fact of the matter is, if you look at Nintendo Today, like if you tune in every day, like this is what like the vast majority of the audience is going to be experiencing, is like they're going to be getting their Nintendo Today news. The Nintendo news from the app first, unfiltered by Twitter, unfiltered by the YouTube community. Like all you're gonna get is like the pure, genuine reactions from the culture and like from the community. And like someone like Arlo, you know, someone who's meant to influence you into hating everything Nintendo does, like he's not gonna have as much influence as anymore. And I do think that is the direction we're going in now, is that we're seeing the end of the terminally online grifter. We are seeing the end of beat 'em ups. We are seeing the end of Arlo. We are seeing the end of all these people. And it's all because they would not shut up about games that they had no intention of ever playing.